Last week, we left on the idea that creating a personal brand requires work, but I planted the seed. There's smart work and there's hard work. Now, I will say that a lot of times to do this, it requires smart and hard work, but I want to talk about the smart part. I have never seen a blog post from you about sports. Why is that?
Well, so let me answer that a couple ways, because I actually have written sports about a little bit, but I do it in a way that's relevant. And I think this is an important point to bring out to a lot of people, because a lot of people, whenever they start creating content, they'll say, well, I like so many different things. I don't know how to pick just one. But you kind of have to pick just one, because if you're going to build an audience, you don't want to confuse them. So people come to me because they want to learn about marketing and strategy, and they're interested in my perspectives of how all this stuff sort of mashes up with the impact on humanity. And that's my intersection. And that's where I stay. However, I also like travel, art, music, sports. I love anything outdoors. And so there are ways that you can bring those stories into those boundaries and still teach lessons. So I'll give you an example. I mentor these inner city kids. I've been doing this for many years. One of them was playing on a basketball game, and they were just crushing the other team. Finally, one scrawny little kid from the other team steals the ball, dribbles down the court, makes a perfect layup into the wrong basket.
Oh, gosh.
So I wrote a blog post. I told this story. I said, see, it doesn't matter how well you execute if your strategy's wrong.
Right. Really great point.
Okay. So that sort of, gets to a very key point around how do you get these ideas and how do you create content consistently? Number one, you kind of have to be aware of what are the stories all around you that you can bring to your audience. And then you've got to write them down right away. You don't have to write the whole blog post or do the whole video, but just capture that idea, because you'll forget. And then when it's time to create content, you've got a whole list of ideas instead of a blank slate, and you're in better shape.
Well, let me give you an example of that straight from the book, Marketing Rebellion. Chapter 9, Your Customers Are Your Marketers. There's a quote there from Hugh McLeod that says, if you talk to people the way advertising talk to people, they'd punch you in the face, which I certainly agree with. The point I wanted to make is the following two sentences. Recently, I vacationed in the stunning Cycladic Islands of Greece. It was an exhilarating trip to the cradle of civilization. It also inspired a marketing lesson. Of course, I am so weird that way. But
there you go.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's the point, which is you're doing what you do in life and you find a way to fit it back into your, what I would call your personal brand frame or your lane.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm going to be talking about Greece, and I might be talking about ancient Greek history in the context of making a marketing lesson that is valuable to you. And ideally, knowing your modus operandi, it would be tying it to some data that reflects the point you're trying to make as well.
I think whenever we're creating content today, it's really a war for attention. It's a war for attention. And so you've got to stand out in some way. And the easiest way to stand out is to be original. And the only way to be original is to bring your story, to bring your point of view to whatever you're trying to get across and capture. So like often when I'm trying to make a point about business or teach a lesson about business, I'll kind of like dive into my personal data banks and think about, well, why is this important to me? What lesson did I learn? How did I learn that lesson? And how am I changing? Why did this change my mind? How did I get there in the first place? I'm the only person that can answer that question because there's only one me. But by explaining it in my original and unique way, it can help people connect to me. And often I get a response like, oh, Mark, how did you know? I was just thinking about that. I've had a similar experience. And that gets back to, what we talked about on the earlier show about marketing is about creating some sort of emotional connection. And a good way to do that is to connect people to your stories.
This episode of the Nonfiction Brand podcast is brought to you by Nonfiction Brandversity. It's a free Facebook group dedicated to the art and craft of personal branding, and we'd like to invite you. Just search Nonfiction Brandversity on Facebook and ask to join. You're in, guaranteed. I can't wait to see you on campus. I want to make it easy for people to connect to Mark Schaefer's stories by saying you can go to businessesgrow.com/subscribe to subscribe to your very popular Grow newsletter. And I get it every week and I always check it out because there's always something in there that either helps coalesce an idea that I've been having and, you bring in a data point. Here's the thing. I like to say we're all swimming in the same swimming pool. So it's not unusual that we would feel, think, and be concerned about the same things at similar times. But we all have a unique point of view on that idea, that challenge, that situation. So that is perfect fodder for you when it comes to content creation, as long as you know where you're going to create that content based on what you're good at, what feels right to you, and how you like to present it. For example, you obviously have embraced the written word in a huge way. I mean, how many books do you have? 7?
7, yeah.
So the written word is very comfortable for you. It's not comfortable for everybody.
Right.
But again, audio, podcasting, this whole podcasting revolution, that's a huge opportunity for you. If you're good on video, same thing. If you're good maybe at epigrammatic short form copy, there's an app for that. It's called Twitter. If you're better at longer form stuff, maybe medium.com is a place for you to post your stuff, or better yet, cross post your stuff. Because, cross posting is one of those things that a lot of quote SEO experts have a problem with. I don't, because I look at it this way. I'm species fishing for a very unique species of fish. Yeah. And not all of them are in the same pond.
Yeah, I think in many ways, even current SEO best practices using air quotes, it's becoming anachronistic for a couple of reasons. If you think about, to win SEO, you've got to be in spot number 1 or 2 or maybe 3 in the search results. So if you're in a crowded niche, most of us are in a crowded niche. If you're not in a crowded niche, then it will become crowded. Right. Once people figure it out. But if you're in a crowded niche, there's only 1 or 2 companies that are going to win those search results. All right. So these are like 2 mean junkyard dogs fighting over the same bone. And they're mean, they're dirty, and they got lots of money. And if you're not one of the junkyard dogs, you got to do something else, right? You got to find another way to get that attention. And one of those ways is just what you're talking about. Forget about what Google thinks about it. Just give people what they want. Give them great content that's not stuffed with keywords. Give them something that values them. Place it in places where they actually want it. Publish it where they want it. Forget about the impact on SEO. And I'm not saying that SEO isn't important. It's very important to many businesses. And, it ought to be a consideration, and you need to think about it strategically. But for most businesses, you've got to really focus more on creating content that's valuable to people, that stands up, and in its on its own merits, on its own terms. Marketing is much more than about tricking people to click things. It doesn't matter if they don't read it or if they don't share it. Nothing matters. So, I think, the quality matters a lot.
I'm quoting from your book, Marketing Rebellion, on page 230. I love the way that you weave anecdotes and stories and then back it up with data and facts to create this compelling sandwich that ultimately is incredibly tasty, if you will. And so I'm going to quote from one of the stories you included here about a person that studied mathematics under Stephen Hawking at Cambridge University, blah, blah, blah. Back then, the students in the computer lab were just starting to use search engines, he said. The 2 leading services at the time were Alta Vista and Yahoo. The room always glowed red and blue from the screens of these services. Then one day I walked in and the room glowed white. everybody had switched to Google without any advertising or promotion. How did that happen so fast? How does a product go viral? You start then talking about the numbers related to word of mouth conversation. 70% of word of mouth conversations happen face to face. 15% of those conversations mention a branded product or service. 20% of all brands in the US are sold through recommendations from friends. Mm-hmm. That's what you're talking about right there, which is, SEO is great, but you're maybe fighting a losing battle. But if you're winning the hearts of individuals who, when they say, oh, you know what, we're looking for a new fill in the blank, and the person you're talking to says, oh my gosh, you got to try XYZ.
Yeah.
You've won the heart of that new person.
I don't know if this statistic was in the book or not, but if a purchase is like under $50, you almost always just go with what your friends say. You know, it's just, I trust my friends. It's sort of a low risk purchase. And so what are my friends talking about? You know, should I go see this movie? You know, should I buy this kind of cereal or whatever? Now, if it's over $50, then people sort of start to turn to search. They turn to the web. They want to look at reviews. They want to maybe, you know, I'm going to spend a good bit of money here. I want to make sure I'm buying the right thing. And if it's over $500, then it's sort of like talk to people, do research, then talk to people again to kind of confirm it. So word of mouth is still so important, and it's really almost entirely overlooked by most companies today.
When you're building a personal brand, word of mouth is probably the biggest lever that you can leverage, if you will. I'm sorry. Let's put that a different way. That's probably the biggest lever you can leverage in order to boost yourself and what you do. For example, going back to your conversation about SEO being more or less irrelevant or growing irrelevancy, I have agreed with that forever, because if you're going to look up copywriter, creative director, Madison, Wisconsin, I've lost already.
You're done. Yeah. Well, maybe you'll win Madison.
Well, yeah. But if people know me, have heard of me, have verified my existence, my quality, my personality, whatever, good or bad, that is going to be more important than me ranking high. And by the way, if you're doing the right stuff, you're going to rank high anyway, because you're talking about things like creative direction or copywriting, and you know, your name will become associated with those keywords. So maybe I can't own the top spots, but if the rest of the page is owned by me, that says a lot right there. Because to me, organic is way more important than SEO. But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah. Well, but the most important thing of all is if someone asks you, well, what's the best marketing book I should read this year? And you say Marketing Rebellion, they're going to go out and buy it. If you would Google that, what's the best marketing book I should read this year? You may not find my book, or maybe my book will be buried in a list someplace. So, I mean, even if you're showing up, getting that word of mouth recommendation from a real human being is more powerful than almost anything that you can earn on the internet.
Yeah, well, I think a big part of that is the fact that your word of mouth mechanism includes a level that is not included in search engine optimization, and that is personal curation. Meaning, if you ask me, what's the best book I've read about marketing all year? And I say Marketing Rebellion, which, by the way, I do and recommend everybody listening to this, read Marketing Rebellion, The Most Human Company Wins by Mark Schaefer, best-selling author of Known. It sounds like I need to pick up a copy of Known, by the way, which I haven't read yet. So you've done a good job there too, Mark. Yeah. But that recommendation means that people who think I'm a decent, smart person who's thoughtful and not fluff-oriented and based on everything that I've demonstrated over time, oh, I trust that guy's point of view. For example, remember the old show? What was the show with Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, the movie review show? At the movies. As a kid, age 13, who was in the movies, I would watch that show religiously, and I would watch for and go to the movies that achieved 2 thumbs up from Siskel and Ebert. Mm-hmm. And if Gene Siskel hated it, but Roger Ebert loved it, I would go see that too, because I knew Roger Ebert was a better reviewer of movies that, resonated with me.
Cool.
If Gene Siskel liked it, but Roger Ebert didn't, no way I would ever go see it. But that's an example of what I mean by personal curation.
Yeah.
I developed a relationship with Roger Ebert. He never knew I existed. I didn't care because he was providing me incredible information.
Yeah.
That level of personal curation, which again, you provide in your books, you're curating ideas and, you can just read by the names of the quotes of people that you put in here. You're curating new relationships for me to check out. Like I know Peter Drucker's name.
Sure.
And I know a bunch of the other names that are quoted in here, but some I don't. And I guarantee you, I'm going to look them up because if they have the personal blessing of Mark Schaefer, they are inherently valuable.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm not blowing smoke. I'm just getting excited about it because there's so much garbage out there.
Yeah.
I've got you can probably see behind me some books piled up, and I read them and, like you, put them down after 3-4 pages going, got it. My favorite form of business book to hate is what I think of as business fable. It's about CEO.
Oh, I can't stand them.
Oh my God. It's like,
I just can't stand them.
Yeah. Well, you know exactly what I'm talking about, where it's written like for a third grader.
Yeah.
So that the CEO can get the gist of it, because it's written like not even Aesop's fables were well written because they had a point. But those books are just garbage. Yeah.
What a CEO wants, or a busy person wants, is just get to the point and punch me in the face with it.
Yeah.
And don't be subtle about it.
Just and provide both sides of my brain the nutrition it needs to go, this is valuable. You've attracted my attention, but then you back it up for the right side of my brain, left side. I always get that wrong. I need to have, I need the data too. So hit me in the face, but then set off a data bomb.
I like the way that you characterize it, that it's sort of like a sandwich, because I think the data brings validation and credibility, but the story is what people remember.
Yep.
And Malcolm Gladwell is a great inspiration for me, because that's how he writes his books. He tells stories that you can remember. So if someone says, "Oh, what's the point of this Malcolm Gladwell book?" You probably won't remember the statistics, but you can remember, he told this story about Hush Puppies and how Hush Puppies went viral as a shoe brand. It started here and da-da-da-da-da. And that's what the tipping point is all about. And that's the story that you carry with you. That's how you make the customer become the marketer. They're not going to remember bullet points, but they're going to be touched and moved by some story that connects to them in an emotional way.
Yeah. And boy, Malcolm Gladwell, that's another huge recommendation, especially if you love podcasts. His Revisionist History podcast is so much fun to listen to and highly recommended by me. So that's a word of mouth recommendation for anyone who loves podcasts. Check out Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History podcast. Where can people really engage with you, Mark, if they were interested in getting more information about your books, your speaking, where can people hook up with you?
Well, it's pretty easy to find me. If you spell my name right and Google me, you'll find me. If you can't remember how to spell my name, which is like most people in the world, all you have to remember is Businesses Grow, businessesgrow.com. You can find my blog there, podcast, Marketing Companion, that I do with Brooke Sellis. My books are there, and a lot of other, free resources. You can find the places to follow me on social media. You can learn about my speaking, and I'd love to connect with your listeners.
And the way you spell Schaefer is Schaefer. And I'm very careful about that because I've got a list of people that I'm talking to for the podcast coming up. And one of those people is Neil Schaefer, who is a very popular, well-known guy, spells it slightly differently. So I'm very careful about that. Again, that is Schaefer, Mark Schaefer. Hey, nonfiction branders, did you know I wrote a book? Well, I did, and it's called Rotoma, the ROI of social media top of mind. I wrote it with my colleague Spencer X. Smith, and it's all about Rotoma, an acronym that means Return on Top of Mind Awareness. Best-selling author and NYU Stern School of Business professor Scott Galloway called it a book that starches the fluff from social media and helps managers allocate capital and find the unicorn among unicorns, ROI. And Chief Content Officer at Marketing Profs, Ann Handley said, "This isn't just a practical way to think about the return on social media. It's also a spot-on, accurate way to reframe your social efforts." Check out all the 5-star reviews on Amazon by searching Rotoma, ROTOMA. Pick up your copy today and start building your personal, professional, and small business brand the Rotoma way. So if someone wanted to get into your book series, what is the best book for them to get and read first?
It really kind of depends on where you are in your life and your career right now. I mean, I was just recommending, there are people that are starting to get into some like just basic, how do we get into social media? I have a book called Social Media Explained. If you want to really learn about Twitter, I wrote the Tao of Twitter, or Tao of Twitter is how many people pronounce it in the United States, TAO. And I mean, that really explains Twitter in a really fun and accessible way. I wrote the best-selling book on blogging called Born to Blog. That came out, I think, 2013. It's still selling like crazy because it's just from soup to nuts. It kind of gets you in the mode of blogging. Content Code was named by some organizations as the best book ever written on SEO. I didn't really write it as an SEO book. The problem that book solves is we live in a really crowded world. How do we get people to find our content? How do we matter? And then the book after that was like known about personal branding. It's like, okay, how do we matter as a company? That's Content Code. How do we get noticed as a person? That's known. And that's a very important book. I think almost anybody should read because it sort of jumps the marketing bubble. Anybody that's starting a business, running a business, if you're trying to raise more money for your nonprofit, if you're trying to, get into politics, if you've got a certain point of view that you want to spread, Known is really the book and to get a hold of, especially if you're marketing. And my new book is Marketing Rebellion, which sort of like throws a bomb at how companies do marketing today and lays out a pretty detailed path about what's going to work as we go forward in this new consumer environment.
Well, there you go. And again, I'm going to say that Mark is one of my favorite authors when it comes to this specific area of human endeavor. It's not just about business. It's not just about marketing. It's about who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And how do you, frankly, get credit for it in the marketplace? We live in a world where people need to take credit rather. I mean, I would love for people to give credit, but we don't live in that society right now. You've got to take credit. And the way you can do it is by asking for it or demanding it via the quality of the content you put out there. Again, branding. What's the difference between capital B branding and capital PB personal branding? I'm going to tell you nothing other than really focusing on who you are, what you do, and how you do it, and communicating it in a cogent way that resonates with your audiences. Find your voice, but guess what? Your voice, literally your voice, may not be your voice. It might be the written word. I'm talking with Mark Schaefer, the fantastic author of Marketing Rebellion, The Most Human Company Wins. That's his latest book. Get one of his books, dive in, and prepare to have your mind pried open or blown open in a variety of ways that are both using the power of story, the most powerful means of information transmission in the history of time, if you ask for my humble opinion. Once again, I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand podcast and Nonfiction Brandversity, and he is
Mark Schaefer, the author of Marketing Rebellion.
It's been great to have you on, Mark. Thanks so much. And for all the Nonfiction podcast listeners out there, I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.